Members, it's the appointed time and we have a quorum. Agenda item, information papers issued since the last meeting. There are 2 information papers. The papers have been circulated to members. There are LC papers number CB bracket 1259/2026 bracket 01. Information paper regarding one-off extra allowance for recipients of Social Security payments and Working Family Allowance provided by the administration, and CB bracket 1259/2026 bracket 02, information paper regarding adjustment to the income limits of the Working Family Allowance Scheme provided by the administration. Items for discussion at next meeting. The next regular meeting will be held at 10:45 a.m. on the 11th of May. It's a Monday. The administration proposes discussing the following 2 items. A. Community care and support measures for the elderly, and B. Supporting aging in place through innovative approaches. The 2 items are interrelated, so the administration proposes a combined discussion of the 2 items. Do members agree? All right, agenda item 3. Provision progress in enhancing day childcare services. Please refer to LC papers number CB bracket 1351/2026 bracket 03 and bracket 04. I'll invite the administration to walk us through the paper. Members who'd like to speak, please press the request to speak button. Over to you, Under Secretary. Chairman, members, the government has been subsidizing NGOs to provide a variety of day childcare services. The goal is to release labor force as well as to support families with children. In 2023 policy address, the government rolled out multi-pronged measures to promote fertility. And in 2025, the government tried to build a strong network to support families. I'm going to brief members on the latest progress in enhancing day childcare services. In recent years, the government has been increasing the relevant places. By the end of 2029, 36 aided standalone childcare centers will be increased. That is up 3,000 places and 23% compared to 2022. The government will give priority to children aged 0 to 2. For neighborhood support childcare project, that's community nanny project, the government will continue to review the demand. From 2026-27, we will continue to increase more places. As for after-school care program, the government has already exceeded target. In September 2025, we have already increased 12 relevant centers. Currently, in all 18 districts, there are 28 such centers. We have increased the number of places from 670 to 1,200. These centers provide services to families who cannot take care of their children for various reasons. We've also rolled out fee waivers under the after-school care program to release the burden of low-income families. In the meantime, starting from 23-24 school year, we have rolled out after-school care program for students. And by 2026, we have already rolled out such services in all 18 districts. There is no cap in the number of places, and students can, on school campuses, get support and learning opportunities. This is to reduce the burden of relevant families. All in all, the government has rolled out multi-pronged measures to provide childcare services, to provide more comprehensive support for families. We welcome any questions and views from members. In relation to this paper, we will listen to members' views very carefully and respond to members' questions. Thank you, Under Secretary. 13 members have asked to speak. I'm going to read out their names first. Mr. Chen Pui-leung, Mr. Andrew Lam, Mr. Hong Kam-in, Professor Chen Wing-kwong, Mr. Chao Xiu-chung, Mr. Scott Leung, Ms. Jovi Chen, Mr. Tam Chun-kwok, Ms. Grace Chen, Mr. Chen Pui-kong, Mr. Bill Tang, Mr. Webster and Ms. Judy Chen. I'm going to give each member 3 minutes, including questions and answers. Mr. Chen Pui-leung, please. Thank you, Chairman. I have 2 questions. First question about the usage rate of day childcare services. Childcare center service include aided standalone child centers as well as childcare centers attached to kindergartens, and they provide services to children aged 0 to 3. They provide day childcare service. From 2024-25, the average usage rate of such services stood at about 68%, and for the usage rate of CCCs attached to gauges, as at 2024-25, the usage rate stood at about 41%, and the usage rate were not satisfactory. What were the reasons behind, and what are the ways to boost the usage rate of these services? The other question concerns paragraph 14. It's about after-school care program for primary school students. The SWD has stepped up this program, and I welcome this move. This will offer support to families or parents who need to work during weekends. I'm looking at the fee level. It says here that the service operators run on a self-financing basis. I believe, therefore, that they are making profit, right? The fee difference of ASCP and enhanced ASCP is about 3.5-fold. It's quite a huge gap, and that's quite a burden for families who opt for enhanced ASCP. So what are the relevant regulations over these measures? I'm going to ask Assistant Director to reply. On the usage rate of CCCs, we've been keeping in view of the situation. We see that CCCs cover subsidized services and non-government subsidized services. For government subsidized services, you see that in recent years, we have opened a number of new standalone centers. Some of the centers have just been opened lately, and so they need time to receive children, and the usage rate will increase progressively. On promotion, we have talked to the service operators. They, through various means, introduced their services to residents in their districts so that more people could learn about their centers and that they will be able to welcome new applications. So we will continue to keep in view of the situation. As for the fee level of after-school care program for students, for primary school students, these services are offered by NGOs on a self-financing basis. So the government, through a subsidy scheme, provide 1/4 or 1/3 of fee waiver to families depending on their needs. As for the other after-school care program for pre-primary children, is also a subsidized service. The fee level is not very high. While the fee level is not high, there is a fee waiver scheme in place so that families in need could get the fee waiver they need. I would like to know if there is any regulation over the fee charging. Is it that you only offer subsidies? Is there regulation? For after-school care program for primary school students, we have a standard that service operators have to follow. As for the one for school students, service operators can set their own fees, but they cannot deviate too much from the average range. They are located in different districts, and so they receive a certain number of students. Mr. Andrew Lam, on the point about increasing places, I give my full support to this. I'm looking at the administration's reply to the budget, and I have some figures in hand. I'm also looking at the usage rate here. I see that the usage rates can differ for various districts. Take the North District as an example. In 2025, the usage rate stood at 107%. For Wan Chai and Tuen Mun districts, the usage rate ranges from 5 to 9%. The administration said some of the centers have just been set up, and so it takes time for them to welcome new children. For Kwun Tong, the usage rate has been standing at 50%. So for North District, it clearly shows that there are not enough places. So is there a mechanism in place to adjust the number of places? For example, for districts with a usage rate of 50%, will you adjust the number of places offered? I'll invite Assistant Director to reply. The usage rate could be affected by various factors. There are new centers, and also for some old districts, because of demographic changes, there is a different service demand. So in recent years, while we try to plan for new childcare centers, we look at various factors. For new development areas, we have a rather low population. So we based on the population there to set the number of CCCs there. For older districts, we have to look at the age distribution of the population, the service utilization rate, as well as the other types of services available in the district. So we depend on these factors to decide where we should put the new CCCs. Also, we look at whether there are appropriate facilities available to see if we can establish new CCCs. Any follow-up questions? A simple follow-up question. From other administration papers, I am getting the statistics for the past 3 years. How regularly do you review the service rate? For example, do you review the usage rate once every year? Assistant Director, we have been keeping in view the situation constantly. We are subsidizing more and more CCCs, so whenever there is appropriate location, we look at the general usage rate as well as the facilities available. If there are proper facilities in place and if we see that there is enough service demand, we would establish a new CCC in that location. Next, Mr. Hong Kang-in. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to make a declaration here. I am an executive director of an NGO, and our NGO has been offering services such as after-school care program for primary school children, as well as after-school care program for primary school students. First, I'd like to thank the government for offering such childcare services to citizens in need, as well as helping to take care of our children. My first question has to do with childcare center services. Many parents said they are very concerned about their children, and if they are allowing other people to take care of their children, they are worried if those carers have the professional qualifications to take care of their children. So I want to know how operating organizations would offer professional training to child carers. My second question concerns the Neighborhood Support Childcare Project. Thanks to the SWD, services have been offered to, for example, community nannies, such as training. Child carers are aging, and we don't have a lot of people who want to become community nannies. The SWD has increased the incentive payment to $60 per hour, but the attractiveness is not very significant for child carers. So I want to know if there are new methods to attract people to become community nannies. As for the after-school care program for primary school students, there are different counseling and support schemes for students during after-school hours. For example, those offered by the Education Bureau. And different bureaus, including the Education Bureau, have to meet KPIs. So I want to know if there are ways to consolidate these programs to make these services more effective.
The Secretary, I will take the third question first, and then Ms. Wendy Chow can take the other questions. For schools, students can take part in both schemes, meaning the school-based after-school care program and also the programs run by the Education Bureau. But these programs run by different bureaus serve different purposes. Our after-school care scheme goes up to 7 p.m., but there are more options in learning activities for the EDB's activities. Our program focuses more on guidance and homework. Different programs come with different key performance indicators. We can talk to the EDB about coordinating our work. We can discuss this. It's not about chasing after targets. It's about providing services to children. Now, on the first two questions, Ms. Wendy Chow will take the questions. Thank you. On training for the service providers, childcare centers are subject to the law. Under the childcare ordinance and the childcare regulations, for each such CCC, they have to hire registered childcare workers or childcare supervisors to look after the children. These workers have to complete courses accredited by the Social Welfare Department. They need the qualifications before they can provide the services at the centers. For community nannies, we want to encourage mutual help among neighbors, so community nannies are not required to have professional qualifications. But when these community nannies do look after children, we want them to have the basic know-how and the skills. So last year, we rolled out enhanced training for such community nannies. These carers had to go through interviews. When we recruited them, we have to assess their skills. The service operators have to provide 14 hours of basic training for these nannies. The SWD designs the training, so the training covers child development, psychology, what to look out for in looking after children, and communication skills. In looking after children with special educational needs, there will be an extra 4 hours of training. That's to help the nannies understand the needs of SEN kids. So we have stepped up training. To ensure quality, service operators are also required to provide continuous training. They have to keep an eye on the performance of these community nannies. As we said, we are trying to promote this service. That's why we increased the incentive payment in recent years. That's to get more people to sign up as community nannies. We're in talks with the service providers to step up publicity. People in need can apply for this service. This service comes with greater flexibility. There is no rigid requirement on hours. Anyone in need can come to the service providers, and those providers can provide home-based or center-based care. Professor Chen Wenguang. I also have questions about the community nanny scheme. I support the scheme. Now, based on the government's replies to the questions about the Special Finance Committee meetings, we can see this service is popular among parents. So there's a question, do we have enough community nannies to keep up with the demand? I just heard the reply about a higher incentive payment, but do we have other ways to encourage more eligible and compassionate people to serve as community nannies? The Social Welfare Department requires basic training and assessment for such carers. But there is no systemic oversight over community nannies. 2 years ago, there was a nanny in Tuen Mun suspected of abusing an infant, and that aroused social concerns. So my question is, would there be plans for setting up systematic assessment mechanisms to ensure service quality? Will we consider requiring continuous education for such carers? Undersecretary. We will not go into the case-specific details because that case is under sub judice. We continuously enhance the appeal of the community nanny scheme. We have just raised the incentive payment. For residents of public rental housing, their income from serving as nannies will be disregarded earnings. Different factors are at play in deciding whether someone is suitable. They have to have a home and whether people are willing to leave children for these nannies to look after. So we try to source nannies from different channels, and we try to come up with different incentives. Mr. Wendy Chow, we have enhanced community nanny services. We used to have 18 teams, now we have 23. Especially for districts with greater demand, there are more than one team in those districts, and they have to provide no fewer than 92 service places. There's no upper limit. When the demand is there, service providers have to provide the service. Community nannies aside, there's home-based and also center-based care. That's how we try to meet the local demand. We have also set aside resources. For districts with greater need, we will further enhance service places to help those in need. Chairman, do we have enough carers to meet the current demand? The more the better. We want to have as many as we can get. Service providers are working hard to recruit more carers. The more carers we have, the greater flexibility we have. We have to consider the capability of the net carers based on the type of children involved. Service providers have to provide services on demand, whether it's home-based or center-based service. We have the pre-primary after-school care. That is also a great support service. It's center-based for children aged 3 to 6. So parents can leave their children at the center. We have such centers across different districts, and they support each other. Mr. Chao Siu-chung. Thank you, Chairman. I welcome the government's continuous improvement to child care services to support parents. These measures will encourage childbearing and also get more people to work. My first question has to do with standalone childcare centers. The government plans to gradually increase such centers. For some districts, such as Eastern District, Wan Chai, and also Central and Western, there are only dozens of places, but the usage rate has been 100%. But there's no plan to increase places in these areas, so what's the government's view about this? By 2029, across the city, 17 out of 18 districts will have a center except Wong Tai Sin. I have been asking the government about this. What's preventing the government from setting up a standalone CCC in Wong Tai Sin? Let's also look at Kwun Tong. The assistant director mentioned many factors that the government will consider. And for Kwun Tong, the center is underused. There will be 3 CCCs with 300 service places in Kwun Tong. How did we arrive at the decision? Will more centers lead to a lower usage rate? Will those new service places be used? Now, finally, for the community nannies, in 5 districts, there will be an extra team of such nannies. From 2025, we saw that in Islands District and Kowloon City, the usage was 617 and 508 respectively, and that was a staggering increase. Paragraph 11 in the paper mentions a gradual increase in service places. Will we give priority for those 2 districts? Thank you. Undersecretary, I want to say a few things before the Assistant Director will comment on this. Some childcare centers look for clients on their own. In Kwun Tong or on Rancho Road, that center is between Kwun Tong and Wong Tai Sin, so people from Wong Tai Sin can use that center. Wong Tai Sin is the oldest district in Hong Kong. We will dynamically assess the situation of Wong Tai Sin to see if there's a need for a childcare center there. You need a number of certain clients to make a center viable. Even the primary schools in Wong Tai Sin are struggling to enroll students, so we have to weigh the resource allocation with care. We also have to look out new development. In Cha Kuo Lane and on Anderson Road, there are new developments and that will give us more opportunities to build new centers. But in Wong Tai Sin, we don't see many fresh public housing development. Now over to Ms. Wendy Chow on the usage rate. In some districts, the usage rate is 100%, or so it seems. In our deliberations, we do not consider only the usage rate of aided standalone CCCs. In those districts, there are also CCCs attached to kindergartens. We also take into account those figures. And then we decide whether to set up a CCC if there is suitable land. We don't have plans for Wong Tai Sin because we have considered the demographic structure and whether there is suitable land in the area, as the Undersecretary said. In Kwun Tong and Kowloon City, when there is suitable land, we have set up such centers. Mr. Scott Leung. Thank you, Chairman. I support measures to increase daycare services for dual-income families in the grassroots and for upward mobility in general. Such measures are positive. I talked to residents and I have come with some observations. Is there a mismatch in the services? Different members have argued that as we increase daycare services, after-school care, the usage rate varies from one district to the next. In some districts, the CCCs attached to kindergartens with longer hours see lower usage rates. Isn't that a problem, pointing to not a shortage, but services that fail to meet the needs of the families in terms of their service hours? And then there's the interface between different services. Are we seeing fragmented services? You got childcare centers, pre-primary, after-school care, and community nannies. People can sign up for all these services. But it's not like people fill out forms once and then they access all the services. They have to look for these services. For each services, they have to go to each department one at a time, and that's making it harder for working parents. So for districts with more grassroots or for districts with more children, can we have one-stop support services? The community living room is a great place for such services. Can we have more figures on such services? Can we have figures on the number of children and income levels in district? And can we also do better in interfacing for different services? Undersecretary. I get Mr. Leung's point. For parents, the location where the children go to pre-nursery classes will have an impact on the decision making. So pre-nursery class admission depends on where the child care happens. So we have to provide enough places for pre-nursery services. Parents have to make their own decisions. The services are there. But we cannot stop parents from choosing certain locations. We have to provide enough service places so that the service is there when they need it. This is more common for CCCs attached to kindergartens. Kindergartens give priority to children going to their own pre-nursery classes. Ms. Wendy Chow. We try to provide such services in each district. We consider the usage level and the district circumstances in deciding whether to provide extra resources. For after-school care and community nannies, when districts come with greater demand, we provide more teams of such carers.
Ms. Jovi Chen. Thank you, Chairman. I welcome the government's move to increase day childcare services to release women's labor force. I'm looking at statistics from the Special Finance Committee meetings about after-school care program. I'd like to ask about paragraph 6. Eight out of the 18 districts, the usage rate for aided standalone CCC stand at over 100%. The usage rate for CCCs attached to KGs, the usage rate, for example, in Central and Western District and in Chunwan is rather low. Instead of encouraging parents to use CCCs with lower usage rate, why don't we study why some of the CCCs are more popular? Paragraph 6 of the paper also says that the number of service places are not at 100%. For example, in Chunwan, if you come across difficulties in identifying suitable sites, I am happy to offer support. What matters is that we want CCCs that are more popular. There should be more of these centers. Ms. Wendy Chow? Parents look at various factors when they choose the CCCs they like. For example, whether the center is close to their homes or whether the center is close to their workplace and their nannies. And also they look at whether the centers could help their children get to the primary school they want. So for some districts, the usage rate is higher, and in other districts, the usage rate is lower. For aided standalone centers, there have been new centers in recent years. And some parents would like to opt for CCCs with newer facilities, therefore they are more popular. In older districts, the service demand might be lower, but there are still parents who would like to opt for centers that are close to them. So there is still a demand for those centers. We'll continue to keep in view the situation. We will consider, for example, for centers with persistently low usage rate, we might allocate the resources elsewhere. In Chunwan, there will be a new aided standalone center in Texaco Road. Mr. Cham Chung Kwok. Childcare services are crucial for many families. When I visited my district, I was told that the availability of these services is crucial to whether they decide to give birth. In North District, there is an increase in such service demand. So there is a huge demand for CCC services. First, I am happy to hear that there will be 4 new aided standalone CCCs in North District. However, it is only by 2029 that these services will be provided progressively. In the northern metropolis, starting from this year, there have been various subsidized housing that will be completed, and people will start moving in starting from this year. So many young families will move into the northern metropolis. So these 4 new centers I mentioned will only be put into operation in 2029. Will that be able to cope with the significant population increase in the district? Also, during these few years of transitional period, are there any services available for infants as well as toddlers so as to not see a gap in services in these few years? Under Secretary, I'll say a few words first. The Secretary, a few days ago in a forum on the Northern Metropolis, said that there will be planning for the Northern Metropolis. We will step up childcare services there. The Northern Metropolis is a new development area, so there will be a high young population. So we will keep in view the situation. As Mr. Sam said, we'll need time to provide services in North District, in Queens Hill, as well as Hong Kong Estate. There is already a new standalone center. And also there are various CCCs attached to kindergartens. We will make a dynamic assessment on the service demand. Ms. Wendy Chow? For the Northern Metropolis, it is a new development area, so we stick to the Hong Kong Standard Planning Guidelines. And for every 25,000 people, there are 100 places offered by standalone CCCs. For the 4 new centers, we already have a completion dates from these centers. So therefore, we know that there are definitely going to be 4 new centers, but there are actually more than 4. We are just waiting for the plan from these centers or service operators. And in the North District, apart from several CCCs we have, there are also CCCs attached to kindergartens. Also, as mentioned, there are community nanny services as well as after-school care programs. So we look at the service demands of various districts, and we might allocate extra resources to increase the number of places. We're not just talking about one spot, so there is greater flexibility in North District. Ms. Grace Chen. I share the same questions asked by Mr. Scott Learn. That is about after school, that is about occasional childcare service. Understand that it takes time for the administration to learn about the service demands of different districts. We members often ask about the number of service places available in different districts as well as the waiting time. I want to know if we will get such information regularly so that we members can take part in the planning of community services provided to different districts. Also, I would like to ask about training for community nannies that provide care for students or children with special needs. That is paragraph 12. I want to know what the training covers and also their regular assessments on community nannies. Under Secretary, I'll defer to Ms. Wendy Chow. Ms. Chow? On services provided to children with special needs, we offer training to community nannies, and we teach community nannies children's physical and psychological development. That is what community nannies have to pay attention to when they care for these children. And it is only by grasping these skills and knowledge that they know how to take care of children with special needs. Also, we ask centers to liaise with community nannies regularly. Centers have to see whether community nannies have a grasp of these special skills and whether they are capable of taking care of children with special needs. Also, we ask centers to provide training to community nannies every year so that they are able to acquire new skills and new knowledge. Also, the SWD continuously monitors whether the training offered by these centers are appropriate and up to standard. We want to see whether they provide standardized training that can meet our requirements, and we continue to keep in view the situation to see how service operators can improve their services. Next, Mr. Chen Pui-kong. Thank you, Chairman. I declare that I am a deputy chairman of a service organization that offers different kind of childcare services. I'd like to follow up on the questions about community nannies. Just now, the assistant director said that there are never enough community nannies. And I think this shows that there is a huge service demand in this regard. According to statistics, there are 10,108 people that need services, but we only have about 2,000 community nannies. That means one community nanny has to take care of about 5 children. We understand the manning ratio is not 1-to-1, but we're talking about a huge service demand here. Therefore, I think we need to provide more incentives. We have to, for example, increase the incentive payment to attract more people to become community nannies. The administration has to increase incentive payment as well as strengthen training for community nannies so that these nannies can become more professional. This is a comment from the member. We've heard the member's view and we will review the incentive payment from time to time. Next, Mr. Bill Tang. I'd like to follow up on the abuse case in Tuen Mun. I understand that we cannot discuss this here because it is subject to a legal proceeding. According to the paper, the government understands there's a huge service demand for newborn infants. The availability of services has to do with whether people want to give birth. We need nannies with professional qualifications because infants can't talk, so they cannot express their needs. I believe that with higher incentive payments, there will be more people who would like to become community nannies. However, are there more effective measures, for example, preventive measures, trainings, or monitoring mechanisms on these trainings? Well, let me make myself clearer. Currently, community nannies can take care of infants aged below 2. Are there different trainings for this kind of community nannies? For example, should they be required to have experiences with taking care of infants? Also, for parents who opt for these services, do they need to install CCTV cameras at their homes? I want to understand if there are relevant measures in place. Undersecretary or Assistant Director? Assistant Director. We attach importance to the quality of community nannies. Therefore, we have been in talks with service operators to see how we can step up trainings for nannies. Also, when there are people who apply to become community nannies, we ask service operators to make assessments on the candidates. Service operators have to see if the candidates have the basic skills and knowledge to take care of infants. Also, we ask service operators to conduct home assessments on community nannies because we attach importance to safety of children. For example, is there a door to the kitchen of the nanny's home? Also, how is the door of the balconies designed? We have special standards in place. Also, we look at whether community nannies would install facilities at home so that to make their home more suitable for infants. And it is only after they have complied with all these requirements and standards that we allow these people to become community nannies. Also, we mentioned there are special trainings and community nannies that take care of infants between 0 to 2 years old. They have to be subject to different kinds of training. So service operators have to identify which community nannies are suitable to take care of infants between 0 and 2, and they'll have to do the assessments themselves. Next, Mr. Webster. I speak in support of the administration's allocation of extra resources to childcare services. I have a question about the cost effectiveness. I see that there are 8,700 subsidized CCCs and they account for 20% of the total number, and the rest of the 80% they are provided by private sector. So it shows that public childcare services cannot meet the service demand. As for the usage rate, there are CCCs attached to kindergartens and the usage rate is 41%, and for after-school care program for primary school children, the usage rate is about 80%. I see that the resources have not been made use of fully. Is there a mechanism in place for the administration to dynamically adjust the allocation or distribution of resources based on the demographic changes as well as the usage rate of various districts?
My second question has to do with the financial commitment and accountability. The incentive Or rather, the subsidy has gone up for parents up to $1,000, and then if the incentive payment for community nannies has gone up to $60 per hour, and then there are also other increases in the resources. These increases represent a long-term financial commitment. Can we set quantifiable key performance indicators for such expenditures? So after the subsidies, how many families will benefit from such arrangements so that we take pressure off them? And can we have quantifiable figures on the performance of community nannies after the rise in incentive payment? Ms. Wendy Chow. Childcare services cover a broad range of services. If families have such a need, we provide such services. For financially struggling families, we provide subsidies so that they can afford the services. We provide a broad range of services so that people in need can access such services. We want basic services to be available in each district, and then for those with extra needs or districts with extra needs, we provide extra service places. In considering adding service places, we consider the usage and also the number of children in a district. We also consider the availability of non-aided services. We also take into account the number of underprivileged families. In such districts, we provide extra services. So we take into account a range of factors in deciding whether to increase services. On the financial commitment, for families with the means, they can apply for the services that are run on a self-financing basis, and then for those financially struggling, we provide subsidies. We are almost out of time, so I will draw the line here. Ms. Judy Chan. Now, some questions for me. When we were examining the bill for mandatory reporting of child abuse, the concern back then was a surge in demand for child services. So for the Undersecretary, do we see a spike in the demand for services after the law takes effect? And then we also saw concerns from members about the shortage of community nannies. We have done what we can. We have increased the service or the incentive payment. We have to face up to our aging population. We also want professional carers, and there's greater demand for professional training. So what do? We're not adding many extra community nannies. I have some suggestions. We talk about data sharing all the time. So can we have a look at the figures from the Employees Retraining Board? Let's see how many people took courses on being confinement nannies. Let's invite them to serve as carers. The paper also mentions increases to aided childcare centers. So I'm not sure where these extra centers will be. We have land issues. We're short of land in Hong Kong. Schools are closing down. Public markets are seeing rising vacancy rates. So can we start with those places? Undersecretary. I will say a few words before Ms. Wendy Chow will take the other questions. Every year, we get 1,000 newly registered childcare workers. We encourage confinement nannies to undertake the training, but the workers involved are different. There are certificates for confinement nannies, but they do not come with a statutory registration regime. CCCs or childcare workers do have to be registered. So we can talk to the ERB about this. Now, on district situations, a requirement was added to the Hong Kong planning standards and guidelines, so you need 100 service places for every 25,000 people. On converting existing premises into childcare centers, the requirements for such centers are even more stringent than for elderly care homes. Those facilities, meaning childcare centers, have to be below 12 meters in height, because that means childcare centers will be competing for space with community centers, community halls, and parking spaces. But if there are vacant facilities like public market, we will try to secure those premises and convert them into services or facilities in need. Ms. Wendy Chow, the member brought up the operation of the mandatory reporting of child abuse ordinance. In response to that ordinance, we increased 2 residential childcare centers offering 96 places. After the law took effect, we have yet to see a surge in reports. Some reports have been made. The service places now can't keep up with the demand. Ms. Jeannie Mann. Paragraph 4 mentions this new requirement about planning standards. So for every 25,000 people, there will have to be 100 service places, and then the land is planned accordingly for childcare centers. The government is encouraging people to have children. Having more such childcare centers will incentivize childbearing. So when will we review this standard again to adjust service places? Undersecretary. We review such figures from time to time. It will take time for us to meet these targets. Hitting such targets will be easier in new development areas or in districts with major development projects, but for developed districts such as the Central and Western District without major development projects, it will be hard to find land for such centers. When there is suitable land, there is development, or when we can secure premises, we will try to meet these targets. In new development areas, hitting such targets will be easier. Professor Alex Fan. My first question has to do with the Neighborhood Support Childcare Project. Many members have commented on community nannies. My question has to do with the monitoring of service quality. So we have the funding and service agreement. The operating body has to set up their own monitoring mechanism. On top of that, do we have extra oversight from the government? Do we have complaint figures from last year? On the incentive payment, how often do we review the payment level? The payment incentivizes those nannies to look after children. And can we have some papers after the meeting on the demographics of the community nannies? Can the government share such papers containing these details with us? Now, on the school-based after-school care program, I welcome the government's move to remove the cap. As at March this year, 205 primary schools had signed up for the scheme. Does the government have a goal on expanding the coverage to a certain number of primary schools? There are 400 or so such schools across Hong Kong after all. Undersecretary. Ms. Wendy Chow will take the first question. On the second point, we are in touch with more school sponsoring bodies. For larger school sponsoring bodies, they are very much on board with the scheme. But you will not see every such body on the list. Secretaries of departments are in talks with school sponsoring bodies. Larger school sponsoring bodies have their own version of such after-school schemes, so they do not take part in the government scheme. We will continue to talk to them, and they are making good use of the resources. Ms. Wendy Chow. We do care about the service quality of the Neighborhood Support Childcare Project. For operating bodies, when they recruit, assess, train such nannies, they need a well-established mechanism. Then they have to arrange nanny matching. Every month, these operating bodies have to conduct home visits. Training and supervision will also have to be provided for community nannies. These bodies have to continuously monitor the quality of these nannies before these nannies are allowed to provide services. For the Social Welfare Department, we conduct regular and also surprise visits to see if those operating bodies are up to scratch, and we will continue with such efforts. Next, Ms. Ilinchik. My questions have to do with aided childcare loans. There are 21 such standalone centers. At the end of this year, there will be a new center in Chengguan. The goal is to increase the number of such centers to 36 by the end of 2026. So apart from Chengguan, we will see another 14 new centers in the next 2 to 3 years. For these 14 centers, do we have the plans and the locations for them? Which districts will receive these centers? If the plans are not in place, how many centers are we short? How are the preparations coming along? Some years ago, the government said the Social Welfare Department would make good use of the vacant non-domestic premises on public rental housing and government departments to set up aided childcare centers. In the past 5 years, how many childcare centers were set up with existing premises? Assistant Director, Ms. Wendy Shao. In Saikong, Chongguan, and Leiyun, we will have 2 new childcare centers. 4 standalone childcare centers are planned for Kowloon Bay, Kai Tak, Chunwan, and Tuen We hope that these centers can open by the end of 2027. For the remaining 9 childcare centers, they're in Huaicheng, Kuntong, North District, Yunlong, Kowloon City, Saikong, and the Southern District. It's all subject to the work's progress and the license approval. By the end of 2029, those centers will become operational. The member also asked about setting up centers on all the premises. Conversion projects have taken place. In the North District, the new childcare center sits on facilities that used to serve other purposes. That venue has been lying vacant, so we turned that into a childcare center. The same goes for Kwai Fong. It used to be a center on a housing estate. That property has been lying vacant, so we turned that into a center as well. When we find suitable premises, we consider setting up aided standalone childcare centers there. Finally, Mr. Mark Trong. Some questions about the after-school care program. The chief executive visited such a school and was happy about the progress, and he mentioned expanding the scheme. Back in 2018, the roundtable proposed a school-based after-school care service. By 2023, the government responded to our scheme. Now we're expanding the scheme to primary schools across Hong Kong. But the scheme has yet to cover kindergartens. I know there are pre-primary after-school care programs. There are 28 centers across Hong Kong, but there are only 1,200 service places. In 2024, there were 114,000 kindergarten students, so 1,200 places are a drop in the bucket. And we talked to the heads of kindergartens. They said parents kept asking them about when such after-school services will be available for kindergartens. For pre-primary after-school care, parents have to pick up their kids at the kindergarten and then send them and then drop them off at childcare centers. Parents who are working cannot do this. So heads of kindergartens told me that parents joked that if a kindergarten offers after-school care, those parents would send their kids to those kindergartens right away. So can the government explore expanding after-school care to kindergartens? There are recent reports that because of administrative costs, some schools have not run their after-school care programs. Have we talked to the Education Bureau about schools that have yet to take part in the school-based after-school care? What are their struggles? How can we help them?
Undersecretary, I'll take the second question first, and I'll ask Ms. Wendy Chow to take the first question. As mentioned, for some school sponsoring bodies, we've been in talks with them. Many school sponsoring bodies, they roll out similar programs themselves, so we haven't been working with them. We'll see if we can allocate resources from the government to these school sponsoring bodies. For other school sponsoring bodies, because of administrative difficulties, for example, there are no staff closing the door of the schools. That's why they couldn't run the program. We'll talk to the Education Bureau to encourage more schools to take part in the after-school care programs. Ms. Chow? About the question of whether the school-based program could be extended to kindergartens, well, we have to take into consideration many factors. Primary schools and kindergartens are of very different scales, and we see many conflicts among kindergartens. For both aided standalone CCCs and aided CCCs attached to KGs, we have provided longer hours daycare services. So aided CCCs attached to KGs could provide longer services. That is, the center may have been closed, but parents could not go in time to pick up their children, and their children could be left in the kindergartens for a longer time until, for example, 8 p.m. And depending on the parents' needs, they could leave their children to the CCC attached to kindergartens until they have finished work. Do you know how many service places are provided under the scheme and how many kindergartens have taken part in the program? For the longer hour daycare services, about 140 centers are providing some 2,000 service places. The service demand or usage rate is not high, but then we believe that with these CCCs attached to KGs, we can offer support to parents in need. We're wrapping up this item. We now move on to agenda item 4, provision of welfare facilities at the public housing development at Kawai Man Road Phase 2. Please refer to LC paper number CB bracket 1351/2026 bracket 05. I'll invite the government officials to come in. I'd like to remind members that if you have any direct or indirect pecuniary interests in relation to the discussion item, please, in accordance with Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedure, disclose the nature of such interests before you speak on the item. I declare that on this discussion item, my service organization as well as the relevant affiliated organizations is involved in this item, so I'm not going to vote. Please refer to LC paper CB bracket 1351/2025 bracket 05. Members who would like to speak, please press the request to speak button. Over to you, Undersecretary. Chairman, members, today we're here to brief members on the proposed project regarding the provision of welfare facilities in Hong Kong Housing Authority's public housing development at Kawai Man Road Phase 2, and we're here to listen to members' views. The government has all along adopted a multi-pronged approach to increase the provision of welfare facilities to respond to the community needs. We believe that there will be 6,200 people living in the district. In response to the needs of youth as well as elderly services, the SWD proposes building a ancillaries facilities block in the development, including a residential care home for the elderly, an office for multidisciplinary outreaching support team for the elderly, an office for home care services team, a district elderly community setting sub-base, and an integrated children and youth service center. The SWD is going to pay the HA for the project. Based on the money of the day prices, we believe that the estimate is about $428 million. The HA will complete the project within 5 years' time, and after the works are completed, the welfare facilities concerned will be assigned to the Financial Secretary Incorporated as government property and handed over to service operators selected by the SWD for fitting out works and operation. We are carrying out the tendering now in parallel to facilitate the early commencement of the project. The Community Involvement, Culture and Recreation Committee of the Central and Western District Council has been consulted and members had no objection. After we've consulted the Public Works Subcommittee, we will ask for funding approval from the Finance Committee. We welcome any views from members and we hope members will support this project. Thank you. 6 members have asked to speak. I'm going to read out their names first. Ms. Judy Chan, Mr. Chen Pui-lun, Mr. Andrew Lam, Ms. Ginny Man, Mr. Hong Kam In, and Ms. Grace Chan. I'll give each member 4 minutes, including questions and answers. Ms. Judy Chan, please. Thank you, Chairman. I welcome this project. After the redevelopment of the Saiwan estate nearby, this particular development project will be the point where welfare facilities will be provided nearby. So I believe the local residents will benefit from the proposed facilities. I have 3 suggestions. In the previous item, we talked about childcare services. Now, in this item, we talk about youth services, elderly services, as well as family services. I hope that if there are such projects in the future, we can think more about the needs of our children. I'm looking at the plans here. I see that 1/3 of the areas are left blank. I understand that they will be used as car parks on the ramps. My view is that it seems that a lot of space is dedicated to ramps in car parks. I want to know if we could reduce the area of the car park. Also, I'd like to talk about sports courts. I know that you will provide a tennis court in this block. However, in the entire Central and Western District, there is no public tennis court. So I hope that this sports ground or sports court could be turned into a multi-purpose spot so that people could play different kind of sports there. Undersecretary, I've heard the members' view. Depending on the demographic changes, we will see if we need to provide childcare services there. As mentioned in the previous item, we will think about whether we should provide more childcare services in new development areas, but it will depend on the local population. So we will keep in view closely to the situation. For example, whether there is a need to provide such services near Saiwan Estate. Housing Department, I want to say that the areas left blank, apart from providing ramps in car parks, there will also be spaces for refuse collection points as well as parking spaces. We have to, subject to the height of 24 meters, and we will provide elderly centers, youth centers, as well as integrated centers, and they all have to be below 24 meters in height, and they will be in the ancillary facilities block. As for the point about tennis court, we adhere to the Hong Kong Standard Planning and Guidelines as we plan for the tennis court. Depending on the usage rate, Well, we have to, based on the standards guidelines, provide a tennis court. We're talking about a large tennis court. As to whether it could be converted into a multi-purpose sports ground so that future residents could play different kind of sports there, well, we have to consider whether there will be noises. So it might not be appropriate for us to provide a tennis court. Basketball courts are instead more popular in public housing estates, and they are popular among young people. Chairman, I'd like to say one thing. We are seeing aging population in various housing estates, and for example, new sports such as pickleball has become popular among elderly people. Indeed, it will generate noises, but there is a new kind of ball that would reduce noise. So I hope that there could be a proper sports facilities for the younger old. Yes, I thank the member for the comments. We will consider in detail whether it is possible for us to include a multi-purpose sports facility in the proposed development project. Next, Mr. Chen Pui-Leung. Thank you, Chairman. I speak in support of this project to provide welfare facilities. This ancillaries facilities block will provide 6 kinds of welfare facilities. For RCHE to be built there, it will provide about 100 service places. Given the aging population in the Central and Western District, there are about 48,000 people, and there are just about 1,000 service places for elderly people in the district. Is there room to further boost the number of service places to be provided? Also, among the 6 types of welfare facilities, the Office for Multidisciplinary Outreaching Support Team for the Elderly and the Office for Home Care Services Team will be run by NGOs. Can the NGOs or service operators lease a premises outside of the block and reserve more service places for RCHE inside this block? Also, I'd like to ask about the cost estimate. Item E here. On cost payable to HKHA, provisions for furniture and equipment for the service operators and contingencies for the works account for about 15%. Can you have a more detailed breakdown for these 3 items under item E? I don't think the 3 items should be mixed together. For example, you should at least separate the provisions for furniture and equipment from the other 2 items. Also, I understand that on the 2nd floor of the block there will be an access platform or a podium, and it will be connected to the housing estate. But I don't see this design from the plan. Can there be barrier-free accesses that link up the housing estate as well as this facilities block? Under Secretary, I'll take 2 of the questions and I'll ask the Housing Department to respond to the rest of the questions. On the question about RCHE, there are fewer subsidized RCHEs in the Central and Western District, but we provide other kinds of facilities, for example, bought places. This is a rather small site, and we have already made the maximum use of the GFA. For the outreaching support team, they need spaces for staff training as well as training for carers, and they currently do not have enough spaces for that, so we are setting aside spaces in this facilities block for them for these purposes. Of course, in future we will continue to identify sites for the outreaching support team. As for provision of furniture and equipment, If we do not have to go through the Public Works Subcommittee, we will make use of the lottery fund to procure furniture and equipment for fitting out purposes. However, we cannot get funding from both the Finance Committee as well as the lottery fund, so we will get a one-off grant. In our future papers, we will have a more detailed breakdown.
Thank you. There will be access, barrier-free access, in fact, and there will be a cover so that people won't be exposed to the element. There will be access connecting Phase 1 and Phase 2 developments for people visiting the place and the residents. Mr. Andrew Lam. My first question has to do with the demographic changes in the Central and Western District. The government has been following development on this front. For such construction project, there will be a time lag. When we started designing this project, when did we design it? Let's look at the demographic change over the past years. There have been an increase in young people and old people, but you have a shrinking middle. Will this change continue? That will affect the outcome. It will take years before the development is completed. So I just want to understand this change. And second, on the elderly care home, there are 17 homes and they're offering 1,130 places. For this 1,000 odd places, how many such places still fall short of the latest floor space requirements? Sure, we need more places. But will the extra places be enough to accommodate the seniors who have to vacate their current places because of this change in their floor requirements? Now, all 17 care homes are subvented care homes. Those care homes exceed the minimum requirements under the law, so there will not be any decrease in the number of places at those care homes. Now, for the private care homes, that's a different story. They may have to shrink their places. Let's see if my colleague has anything to say. Mr. Yong, Mr. Alan Yong. When we conceptualized the redevelopment of Saiwan Estate, we worked with the housing department about the space that would be available and what facilities we can put there. From conception to the completion, there are many years involved. For many facilities, we think of them as bare shells. Closer to completion, there may be a need to change the facility. In Tuen Mun, we're going to put a childcare center there. But because of the mandatory reporting of child abuse ordinance, we converted the childcare centers into residential childcare centers. So closer to completion, when we see a need to convert the facilities, we may change our plans. We may expand or shrink a certain facility to meet the needs of the time. Thank you. Ms. Jenny Mann. I'm a member of the board of the Tonghua Group of Hospitals. This project under discussion here involves moving a multidisciplinary support team into the facility, so I will simply make some comments. I welcome this proposal. The service team is leasing a place at the private premises, and with the permanent presence, their life will be made easier and they will be able to save on rent. When the government builds welfare facilities, let's adopt the practice here, and that means we move service teams leasing in private buildings to move to new developments so that they have more space and they can provide services more effectively. A response to the comment, Undersecretary. Every month, those organizations will be able to save $300,000 in rent, and they will also be able to free up the premises they are currently leasing. Of course, other welfare facilities were first in line to lease those freed up facilities, and every year we can expect $3 million in saved rent. Mr. Hong Kam-in. It's hard to secure welfare premises in urban areas. This project is on Kawaiman Road in Saiwan. It's hard to come by such land in urban areas. So there will be 7 stories offering 6 welfare facilities. We are reprovisioning 5 facilities. There will be a net increase of 1 elderly care home. So we're not adding any other service in the area. My question is, will we consider adding a couple of stories to the building to accommodate more services? Or can we build a basement? Can we build a basement to serve as a car park? Every time we discuss works project, we feel the shortage of car parks in Hong Kong. Can we make the most of this site for those purposes? Undersecretary. So the point is about the gross floor area. This has to do with building height restrictions and the cap on the gross floor area. The Housing Department can explain this point further. The government tries to make the most of the land. There is a building height restriction, 65 meters. So building up further will be tough. On parking spaces, there are many parking spaces at Phase 2. Phase 1 and Phase 2 put together will amount to 200 parking spaces. So that should be enough. Ms. Grace Chen. I welcome this proposal. I believe the government is providing as much space as possible. When we add service places, we have to be mindful of the backlog or the queue in the district. We can look at the district level demand in relation to the silver economy. We can project where this district is going based on the demand for elderly care homes and also the home-based services. So we would like future papers on such topics to include the number of people waiting for elderly care home services. And can we also have data sharing involving different facilities? We need long-term planning that is informed by figures of community-based services and care home-based services. Now, when we house different welfare facilities in the same building, we will have more data. So can we have more resources that go towards opening up the data or fostering data sharing among the future welfare facilities? Undersecretary. Now, this is a point that is beyond the scope of this proposal, but I can say this. There is a digital transformation scheme. The Social Welfare Department will encourage NGOs to make better use of resources to design with their own digital systems, and that will help the SWD gather data. And with the data, we can link up the different data points. The local district welfare services can also help the NGOs with the data sharing. Mr. Chen Hokfeng. I'm not a member of this panel, but I serve this district, so I have something to say. It's great to have this welfare complex there. There's no land in the Central Welfare District, Central and Western District for such welfare facilities, but we're now getting this site, so it's a great idea. The site is somewhat close to the MTR station, but it's quite a walk to reach the destination from the MTR station. There's a slope, and the carriageway is rather narrow. This is not the most accessible spot in Kennedy Town. And when we are putting so many welfare facilities in the complex, sure, those facilities involve back-end support. But then for the family support centers and the elderly care home, if we put those facilities in there, are we making those facilities harder to access for people? That location is not the most accessible point. Without a dedicated minibus service, people cannot reach that spot. So my question is for the government, can we just not move the integrated family service centers and elderly care homes to a place on a slope? When you have more services at the spot, what plans do we have to make the transport more convenient? After all, people will be using those services. Have we talked to the housing department or the transport department to step up transport services? My next question has to do with the care home. Is that a care and attention home or just a regular care home? If it is a care and attention home, then ambulances will be visiting the area more frequently. Has the government considered this? Thank you. So this care home will be a regular care home rather than a care and attention home requiring a high degree of care. Of course, there will be some visits of ambulances. Now, on whether we can delay the relocation of the care home, people may be used to the existing location. There will be a new facility. It makes no sense for us to set aside the location for them while the operator rents somewhere elsewhere. We will gradually move the facilities to the new structure, and we will consider the situation as we adjust the move-in date. On the question about the minibus, my colleague from the housing department will take the question. I know this is a point top of mind for the member and the local residents. We're in touch with the social welfare department. There will be a shuttle lift for people to access the facility from Victoria Road, and there will also be parking spaces. This is a CEDD project currently underway. On parking spaces, there will be a parking space near the elderly care home for future ambulance visits. There will also be time-based meters near the social welfare facilities. We will also talk to the TD about increasing the minibus services. It will depend on the population at that point, and then service will be stepped up. Mr. Mark Chong. Just a brief question. There was a project approved in Chaguo Lang involving 3 centers. The price back then was just over $100 million. This time it's about 6 centers, but we're spending $420 million. Why this difference?
Chairman, I'll say a few words and then I'll ask my colleagues to supplement. Yes. We'll shoulder part of the costs of the foundation works. This Kawaimon Road project is located on the slope, and it is at a much higher level than that in Charcoal Lane. So there is a difference in terms of the costs of the two projects. Yes, Mr. Yong. Like Undersecretary said, the Kawaimon Road site is located on a slope, so the cost of carrying out the site formation as well as the foundation works is a lot. It costs about $40 million. Therefore, the project cost of the Charcoal Lane project is lower. Also in Charcoal Lane, there is a day elderly center as well as a neighborhood elderly care center. But here in Kawaimon Road, we are providing a lot more services. We are providing double of the types of services, including youth services and elderly services. I hope at the Public Works Subcommittee meeting, these figures will be provided. Well, please provide more detail at the Public Works Subcommittee meeting. Well, I speak for the first round, and I'll invite Mr. Hong Kam in to speak for the second round. I'd like to follow up on the point about GFA as well. I have some comments. Just now you said about 10 years ago you started to conceptualize this project, and the information you provided to the district council might be different from that offered here. I hope that you won't stick to the same mindset in the future. It is very hard for the government to identify suitable sites like these. Understand that this kind of projects is subject to a building height restriction or GFA restriction. I just want to say that in future, if there are valuable sites like these, you could make better use of the space. I see that you can actually build a higher building on this site or a taller building. In future, if you have similar sites like this, please make sure you make better use of the land, because we do want to incorporate new facilities in these sites. Any views, Undersecretary? Yes, we have heard your view. We try to incorporate more facilities in this kind of sites in urban areas as much as possible. Mr. Hong Kam Im, speaking for the second round, you have 3 minutes. I share the same view with you, Chairman. I hope that in future the government could relax the restrictions on the use of GFA for welfare facilities. That way we could promote better use of welfare services in Hong Kong. We do not have enough elderly or childcare services in Hong Kong. If we stick to the same approach, we won't be able to offer enough services for our citizens. So the government has to work with various departments to relax the restriction on GFA to release the site. Any views on the Secretary? I thank the member for the suggestion. We will review this in other projects in future. If there are no other views, I want to ask if members agree that we pass this project to the Public Works Subcommittee. No objection, all right. There being no other business, meeting adjourned. Thank you.